The last we did was the 22nd verse. Content with whatever is got unsought, free from the pairs of opposites, and free from envy, even-minded in success and failure, though acting, he is not bound. So, taking from the last statement, Kritvapi na nibadhyate. Kritvapi na nibadhyate means even though he is acting, this person who is liberated, he is not bound by the action. So I remember we left a question at the end of last week. The question was, what should be the modus operandi to get liberated from the performance of action? Isn't it? Now we've had a few comments, we have few contributions in the group. I can't go into the detail of them, though I like Gayatri Ma. In her answer, she said, if you get sukha, it's a prasad. If you get dukkha, it is maha prasad. So she put the word maha in capitals. So I do not know, how can dukkha be maha prasad, ma? Sukham can be prasadam, how can dukkha be maha prasad? So that was something very interesting. I didn't understand. I understand in the sense that it all has to be accepted as a blessing, as a grace of the Lord, whatever good or bad. And you also went ahead to say you got to work without likes and dislikes, ego. Then you either not affected by either you're elevated or elated or depressed rather. And then Jayama and Rajima also presented in similar lines to be perform selfless actions, to be in the present, dexterity of action, not acting for the sake of fruits of actions, etc. So there were a few contributions. There was a very interesting observation from Sethuramanga also, but I can't get into the detail of it. But what I would do is I will run through the points. So I've actually put it in form of notes, so you can take a note of it. Is it visible, or does it need to be made a little bigger? Is it visible? Okay. So starting off, the question is, what should be the modus operandi to get liberated from the performance of action? Little bigger? Okay, then it might cover up the pictures, okay? Just for a while. A few pictures will get covered up. Is that okay? Okay. So just a few points for your reflection. So what should be the modus operandi to get liberated from the performance of action? Now, first and foremost, you got to examine and find out whether the actions you're performing, are they driven by the mind or the intellect? Because when we talk of an action needs to be steered. What is it that drives your body into action? What is it that steers your body into action? All right. So is it either your mind or the intellect? Now, when we talk of intellect, it is only the sattvic intellect. The rajasic and tamasic intellect are of no intellect at all. They're of a mediocre quality or no quality at all. So the sattvic intellect understands the very purpose of action. What is the action and what is its purpose? Now when I say understands the very purpose of action, one of the aspects of action is it clearly notes the difference between bandham and moksham. So there is a very clear mention of this in the 18th chapter, the 30th verse. A sattvic intellect knows actions which are bondage, actions which are liberating. So when we talk of what is the modus operandi of an action which liberates you from the performance of action, it has to be dealt with that which drives you into action. Who is the driver? It's like the example of the boat we took in the last Bhajagovindam class. The captain is all that matters to steer the ship. If the captain is smart, the ship reaches its destination safely. Similarly, if you want your action to produce the right results, if you want your action to be liberating, you must be very clear what drives your body into action. So it is the intellect, it is the sattvic intellect. Now what does the term bondage mean? Bondage means any action which creates a mental impression. Any action which creates a mental impression, and these mental impressions are in the form of vasanas and desires. So when you talk of bondage, the bondage happens in the form of your vasanas and desires. These are known as the mental impressions. And when you talk of liberation, an action should liberate you from these mental impressions, which is your vasanas and desires. Now, in order to get on to that path of liberation from the bondage of action or the performance of action, now what is the first thing you got to do is, the first principle you got to keep in mind is you must enter and operate in the field of your activity, which is your swadharma. Now perhaps you can qualify this as we can call this swadharma as predominant nature. Swadharma, as we understand, is your predominant nature. Predominant nature means the bulk of your vasanas forms your swadharma, the bulk of your nature. So the first principle you got to ensure, the first aspect you got to ensure is you're operating in a field which is designed for you, which is your swadharma. Now it is undoubtedly very clear, my swadharma is philosophy. I will die as a philosopher. This is my dharma, this is my nature. So must you be very, very clear in trying to find out what are you made of, what are you made for rather. What is it that truly defines you? What is it that is your true personality is? What is your swadharma is? So by going into the field of activity, you have a great chance of getting rid of your vasanas. Point one. Second is, having entered your swadharma, what is the modus operandi? Now the modus operandi here means how do you operate once you enter a particular field. Now what happens is, if you look at the mind, the mind behaves in three forms. Before the action, the tendency of the mind is there is an enormous craving, isn't it? There is a craving for the enjoyment, craving for the experience. The mind has a build-up much before the action. Even before the enjoyment, even before the experience, the mind starts recapping, or rather visualizing what could that experience be. Secondly, while one is acting, there is a reckless indulgence in the action. You go berserk. You don't seem to have any control while you are in the action. And after the action, there is a tendency to linger, relive, recap the enjoyment you had in the experience. So the three aspects, which is the craving, the indulging, and the lingering, these three are the mental weaknesses that actually create impressions. So at least what you should know is what creates bondage is these three. These three mental tendencies, because it is the mind that either craves for or indulges or lingers, these three creates the mental impressions. And how does it go about bondaging you or binding you? As I have written there, it is the very nature of the mind that it either reinforces the existing impressions, like whatever you have desires, when you keep operating this way, what happens? You are giving it the further strength. You reinforce the existing vasanas or desires, or you go about creating new impressions or fresh vasanas. Are you all with me? The three mental tendencies, the craving, the indulging, and the lingering. So the craving and Shanti Gavangaru. Hari Om, sir.
I was just thinking when you said that when we are performing an action with this dharma, that means it's a basic tendency of ours. But line when we are into a kind of gaining knowledge, spiritual knowledge, are we not to take a little better route than the Swadharma? Isn't it so?
Can you repeat the last section? Sorry,
Yeah.
when you said the spiritual.
Yeah, what I am saying is when along the line when we are learning through the spiritual discourses, spiritual classes, so we tend to get some kind of inputs to change our old vasana and the desires to be reduced, and then we take it little course of actions. Did you get my point?
There is a lot of disturbance at your end. We are trying to follow. Is it possible for you to phrase your question, please? Yeah, please. So meanwhile, we are just disabling your microphone because there is some continuous disturbance coming from your end. Okay. Okay. Instead of swadharma, old vasanas and desires, we may get knowledge from the wise teachings. Can we not do actions with the new knowledge? I rather don't follow what you're asking though. See, I don't get what you're really asking. See, I understand when you say Swadharma is your vasanas. When you say old vasanas and desires, Swadharma is your predominant nature, sir. Alright? And that holds on to you until you are dead. Until one dies, those vasanas are the predominant bulk of your personality. Okay, so you can't get rid of them, you can't exhaust them, because they are actually burnt out through experience. So you got to live them out. But if you don't, then you are suppressing them. So you got to identify your swadharma so that you start expressing them. If you don't express them, then they are bottled up. That's a frustration, you see. So with the knowledge, what you got to do is, what you actually do is, you start burning the impressions which are created, the other impressions which are created, and also the possibility of the new impressions you might create. So the knowledge only helps you from creating new impressions and getting rid of old impressions. So knowledge is not in any way going to contradict your swadharma. Swadharma is only entering a field which you are designed to, which you are, whether you are a singer or an architect or a medical doctor or a sportsman or a musician or a philosopher. That determines your swadharma. But that doesn't make anything. Thereafter, how you function is important. So the only first point I made is, make sure you choose the right field. Having entered the right field, you got to ensure you don't operate on the mind. So when you operate on the mind, these three avenues starts creating impressions. So the knowledge you learn is only going to burn the rest of your vasanas. Okay, the rest of your vasanas in philosophical terms is known as sanchita vasanas. Just for discussion's sake, the knowledge and wisdom takes care of your sanchita vasanas, right? And also ensures that you don't end up creating new vasanas. No, we are not bound by our vasanas till the end. See, technically speaking, when a person exhausts his sanchita vasanas, now try to take a note of this term, when a person exhausts his sanchita vasanas, then one is said to be liberated. That is a state of known as self-realization. It gets a little technical, and I need to get into a different subject matter which is quite elaborate. But what you understand is, the knowledge deals with the bulk of your vasanas. Okay? Predominant vasana is different to the bulk. You got to differentiate there. The bulk vasanas is known as sanchita vasanas. Predominant vasanas you're born with is known as swadharma. Okay, you're born, certain vasanas you're born with. That is not the bulk. Like when you go for a holiday somewhere, you don't take your entire resources with you. You take some resources with you to spend there. Isn't it? Similarly, so when you come into this embodiment, you just bring a few vasanas for exhaustion. And of that bundle vasanas, there is the swadharma, which is the predominant nature. Okay? Now, Sitaram is asking, could it be that if I am predominantly of Rajasic Swadharma, then how will I get knowledge which is of Sattvic in nature? In fact, Your swadharma is not determined by the nature of your mind. Swadharma is only a vasana, which is only inclination towards a particular field. Now, I have this vasana for philosophy. I have discovered that this is my predominant nature 30 years ago. Now, I have been in this field and I shall remain in this field for the rest of my life. Now, what happens is, when I started my spiritual journey, let's say discussion's sake, I had 10% sattva, okay, 50% rajas and 40% tamas. 10, 50, 40. Sattva, rajas, tamas. Sattva, rajas, tamas has nothing to do with the field I've chosen. I could be an engineer, I could be a doctor, I could be an architect, but I am a philosopher. I started with 10, 50, 40. Now, during the course of my spiritual journey, what I have managed to do is, I have made 40% sattva. 20 years later, the 10% has become 40% sattva, 30% rajas, 30% tamas. Just saying arbitrary. Another 10 years later, the sattva has become 60% sattva, 20% tamas, 20% rajas. So as this journey progresses, what you have noticed is, in the very beginning, I am predominantly a very rajasic person. No doubt I am into the field of Vedanta, I am into philosophy, but I am a predominantly rajasic person. But as I have evolved, I have become more sattvic, even though the swadharma, the field of operation is the same. So it is wrong to say that rajasic swadharma, there is nothing called as sattvic swadharma and rajasic swadharma. Swadharma is only a particular field. It's only drawing you to a particular activity. Okay? That should very clearly clarify that the swadharma is not defined by the mental makeup. Alright. So coming back to the modus operandi, if you operate based on the mind, where you start craving before the action, you start indulging in the action, and you start lingering after the action, these three avenues create the mental impressions, which either reinforces or creates new impressions. Now, this is how one is bound to an action. You got to understand this. This is how one is bound. Now, you want to be liberated, you must ensure you must do exactly the opposite. You must know what not to do. So the first and foremost thing you got to keep in mind is, in order to be liberated, you must operate on the intellect. When you operate on buddhi, you become objective. Objective means you don't fall a prey to these three tendencies of the mind. You don't get carried away with the action. You're very objective to the action. Carried away is what? Craving, indulging, lingering. This is what being carried away. Objective is, you don't crave for anything, you don't indulge in anything, nor is there any lingering. And lastly, you convert your action into worship by adopting the principles of Karma Yoga. So action can be liberated only when you convert the action into worship. And how does it get converted to worship? When you perform it as Karma Yoga, which is, you have a goal or an ideal or function in the spirit of yajna. So when you operate this way, you will get rid of the vasanas or the desires which seems to bind you when you perform action. But once you have these principles and you take a very cautious, a very careful approach, You will continue to perform the action, but yet you will remain liberated. Liberated means there are no mental impressions. Are you all able to follow me? Is the audio clear? Okay. Because at my end, the signal strength is rather very poor. So I was wondering whether everything is coming your way. Okay. Okay, so this is what you got to keep in mind whenever you perform an action. That action is to be performed with the sole intention of reaching the goal. Yes, sir. Adigan Setraman Garu. Yeah, please.
See, our predominant vasana, in my case, it must have been business. But now I have retired from business and I am in seva. So you suggest I should go back to business to burn off my vasanas?
See, you may have left business, but business will not leave you. See, I may disagree with it, but Vasantama immediately saying correct. She is endorsed. There is nothing more greater endorsement than that.
And I am putting serious efforts to be totally away from it. So you suggest I should do, not do?
I will talk to you personally, sir.
Yeah.
No. See, it is not the question of abandoning action. It is not the question of abandoning action by force or compulsion. Naturally, you should feel that see, in the initial stages, you could be a person who is more extroverted businessman. Okay, and as you evolve, you have become an introverted businessman. Even though you may have an interest or an acumen or a certain niche, you have a certain idea or knowledge of it, but you become an introverted person as a businessman. Okay, now being a businessman is nothing wrong. First and foremost, you must understand, being a businessman is nothing wrong. But as long as when you not perform that action, if you find any element of frustration, then you must keep that action going. That's the measuring tool you alone should know. You alone would know what's happening within you.
No frustration.
No frustration at all.
No frustration. See, this the knowledge is helping me actually, in fact, but
Okay.
no frustration. I am a sort of liberated.
That's nice to hear.
He uses his business skills in charity.
That is why I say
That's what I
that thinking as a businessman, that will not leave him. Because many a time upon my interaction with him, many a time, I only can see that old business vasanas of his coming to the forefront, and the way he approaches things, the way he talks. He tells me about marketing things, he tells me about so many things, but I frankly tell him, sir, I am not a marketeer. I will teach, but I can't market myself. And he will have ideas of marketing and that and this. Now, you can't not but be a businessman. That is your nature. You see, helplessly it comes naturally to think that way. And helplessly I am unable to think how to market this knowledge. You want me to, but do you ask me, sir, you want to limit this knowledge to a handful of them? Not really. I would want to wish that this knowledge goes and serves as many people as possible. But you want me to do that? I said, I will not be able to do that. My focus is elsewhere. If somebody else wants to do it, by all means. How you want to take it out, whom you want to take it out to, please do it. See, in that sense, you have become an introverted businessman. You're not using that business tendencies of asanas to, with a cutthroat attitude to make your own, to fill your own coffers. You're not doing that. You're far from it. So you've evolved, you're using that connections or using that thought process to advance the good of others. And she said you're doing a lot of charity and helping others. So again, you're operating on your own field. So you will not, however wise you are, you will not be able to switch roles. For example, what I'm doing, I will not be able to switch roles with you. What comes naturally to me vis-a-vis what comes naturally to you, that is Swadharma. But you may be able to convey these ideas if you're given a platform. If you're asked to share these ideas, you will be very happily to share the ideas. But it would not come naturally to you to live a kind of a life that we naturally live. But there's nothing right or wrong in anything, please. You may be far more evolved than all of us put together. That is very much possible.
Now I agree. Actually, basically, I am a technocrat and a project man. So I am, and I am able to raise funds in our charity as well as execute projects at a low cost and negotiate instruments at a very competitive price. All this I am able to leverage on my business strengths. Now I understand. Unknowingly, I am using my skills.
Luckily, I understood you before you understood yourself. I remember telling him this many times, even long before. I remember there was a conversation and I was telling, sir, this is what is your unique nature. You can't stop doing that. I can't stop you from doing it, and nor should you forcibly stop it, but you might find a better applicability for it. See, either you use it for sir, what will change? Spirituality, remember, I always mention this, spirituality is not determined by what you do, spirituality is determined by for what you do. It is not what you do, for what you're doing. You could have the skills which you have mentioned for your own personal well-being, or you can do it to advance the welfare of humanity at large. You see? So when you use that for a larger purpose, it becomes karma yoga. And that is a guaranteed way how you will exhaust your vasanas, and certainly it will liberate you. Okay, sir. And we also agree that your 95% liberated, 5% little bit bondage is there, sir. Huh? Sorry for qualifying.
By your words, I already.
Yes, sir, sorry?
By your words, I already feel liberated.
I'm so happy to hear that, sir. But the sad part is the Guru is bound, the Shishya is liberated. This is unheard of. So many Puranic stories are there. The Guru is liberated, the Shishas are born. Inge ulta irukkenga. Sir, please bless us also. We also will liberate, sir. One day. Yeah. So this is where you have to be very careful that you approach. It's your approach to the action that either binds you or liberates you. It's not the choice of action. You have to choose the action based on your swadharma, operate on the intellect. Don't go into the aspects where the mind creates impressions. And if you do that, you're well and truly cleansing the mental impressions or stains. These are all the stains of your personality, which is the vasanas and desires. Okay. Okay, a few comments here to address. Is vasana not the same as swadharma? Business is swadharma, and one can do it with either sattvic, rajasic or tamasic attitude. Okay, firstly, is vasana not the same as swadharma? Yes, vasana by itself is not swadharma. The predominant vasana is known as swadharma. Like for example, I have vasanas for philosophy, I have vasanas for Carnatic music. So much so, even when I'm doing my walking on the treadmill, every day, if I'm walking for an hour, every evening or morning if I'm doing on the treadmill, I put on Pancharatna Kriti and I do my walking. And I've been doing that for the past, I don't know, from the time I've been introduced to this music, including this evening I will be doing. So literally in my sleep also I might be singing the Pancharatna Kritis or this Carnatic music. So I have such strong vasanas towards music, but I know I am not a musician. I have vasanas towards sport, but I can't become a professional sportsman, etc. So just because you have vasana, vasana is not swadharma. The predominant nature of your vasanas is known as swadharma. So business, yes, if you have a business vasana, business is your swadharma. But the way you go about it, you can do business, you can be a sattvic businessman, you can be a rajasic businessman, you can be a tamasic businessman. The choice is yours. And the sattva, rajas, tamas is actually that which determines how spiritual you are. So if you are a spiritually evolved person, you will be a very sattvic businessman. A tamasic fellow is very shrewd, very crude, very gross. He will also do business, but he will do it in the most unethical way, most gross way. Okay? And so one can, continuing your clarification, one can be in any field of activity and pursue that with one of the three attitudes. Yes, I have answered. You can do it. Being a philosopher, I can be tamasic. Being a businessman, you can be sattvic. So you are more philosophical, you are more spiritual than I am. The field of operation doesn't make you spiritual. I am born with this vasanas for Vedanta. That is my purva karma. Now whether I evolve or devolve depends on what is the modus operandi I adopt. So it is the modus operandi that determines whether you evolve spiritually or devolve spiritually, not the field of operation. Many people think it's the field of operation that determines whether you evolve or devolve, not the field of operation. How you operate in the chosen field. And what is the chosen field? Swadharma. You are born with it. Find out what your Swadharma is and operate well. Okay. Are we good with this? Rachima? All clear? Okay. So let's move on. We'll take up verse 23. Gata sanghasya muktasya jnanavasthita chetasaha yajñaya charatah karma समग्रं प्रविलीयते गतसङ्घस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रविलीयते. So this verse gives the conclusion of what that right action is. Here he says one who is devoid of attachment, gata sanghasya muktasya, he is liberated, jnanavastita chetasaha, whose mind is well established in knowledge, yajnayacharata karma, acharata means acting for yajna. Yajna is sacrifice. Samagram praviliyate. Samagram means the whole karma. His entire action is dissolved. Action is dissolved because of wisdom. Action, the antidote for action. Here action means vasana. The antidote for action or knowledge, vasana is jnanam, knowledge. Rajima, can you tell me what is the title of this chapter? Without looking. No, you are cheating. You are not looking, please. Could you come again, please? Oh, you did. Oh, you're too fast then.
Renunciation of.
So, as a teacher, you know all tricks, huh? Yes, ma. What is the title chapter? Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So renunciation of action in wisdom. So when you renounce the action into wisdom, what happens? Vasantama, what happens when you renounce the action into wisdom?
It dissolves and you get liberated.
Correct. So being with a liberated soul, you also liberated, ma. No, liberated soul is your husband. See, many people don't have that kind of conviction to say that they are liberated. No? So, if anybody says, we will only endorse it and promote it. So, to that extent, I will do the marketing, sir. Setraman Garu. And the marketing na panuve.
Liberated during the satsang.
Don't ask after satsang what happens, sir. So, the
Only Wednesday evening and Sunday afternoon.
So the one who is, as I said, he is concluding what all he has said so far. He is devoid of attachment, no attachment to external fluctuations, no attachment to the internal conditions, no attachment to the effects of his actions, which is already mentioned so far. The internal conditions, external fluctuations, and effects of his action. Liberated, whose mind is established in knowledge, acting for the sake of yajna. Yajna. What is the word yajna mean? Patelji, what does the word yajna mean?
Cooperative effect. Cooperative.
We can't hear you. Okay. Yeah, got it.
cooperating.
To sacrifice. Patel ji, बोलिए. Yajna means to sacrifice. To offer to the Lord. Okay. Offer to the Lord. What else yajna means? An offering. An offering to the Lord. Yes, yajna is sacrifice, is offering to the Lord. Tata, you were saying yajna is? I think, yeah. Tata, we can't hear you. I think you are suggesting it is a cooperative endeavor, isn't it? Yeah. So yajna is an action dedicated to a higher cause. An action as an offering to a larger interest. And whenever you talk of selflessly, unselfish or selflessly. So whenever you talk of yajna, it is actually yajna that actually burns your ego and egocentric desires. So when you perform a yajna, that is the only thing that is going to burn your ego and egocentric desires. So having acted for the sake of yajna, he says his entire action, his whole action is dissolved. Okay. Right, so as I said, he's just summarizing what has been said so far. Alright. And in fact, the moment he talks of yajna here, from the verses 25 onwards, he's going to talk about the 12 yajnas, the most beautiful section of the Gita. It doesn't come anywhere else in the Shastras except this, from verses 25 to 30, the 12 yajnas. Okay, we shall get into it by today, hopefully. Okay, so we'll take verse 24. Brahmarpanam brahmahavihi brahmagnau brahmanahutam brahmaivatena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina brahmarpanam brahmahavihi brahmagnau brahmanahutam brahmaivatena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. Very, very famous verse. In fact, this is the verse which is chanted before meals, if you remember. Okay. So what is said here is the act of offering is Brahman. The oblation is Brahman. Offered by Brahman in the fire of Brahman, by seeing Brahman in action, Brahman verily shall be reached by him. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmai Matena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. Perhaps till now we have been chanting it mechanically. Now you have a deeper meaning to it. You understand what actually it means. You know, when you chant something ignorantly without knowing, when you do something ignorantly without understanding what it means, it doesn't have that similar elevation as much as you do with an understanding. You know, so where, in fact, you know, before I slip into this, since I have mentioned this concept, you know, the highest spiritual experience, the zenith of spiritual experience is where there is a marriage of the head and the heart. Where your heart must feel exactly what the head understands. The head must understand exactly what the heart feels. It is a beautiful marriage between the head and the heart, between the mind and the intellect. And then you go to the highest spiritual experience, which is captured with the mind and intellect. Because real spiritual experience, self-realization, transcends the mind and intellect. Isn't it? Self-realization transcends the mind and the intellect. It is beyond the capacity of the head and the heart. But when you want to experience that spiritual joy or that bliss or that elevated experience, it is only possible when there is a merger, when there is a marriage between the head and the heart. But in normal circumstances, what happens with the head and the heart? Rajima, before telling what happens between the head and the heart, can you tell what is the head, what is the heart here we're talking about?
Could it be the mind and the intellect, Guruji?
Yes, it is. It is the mind and intellect. But then what happens usually with the head and the heart?
There is a complete mismatch. The
There is almost there. Yeah, go ahead, ma, please.
the mind doesn't listen to the intellect, while the intellect guides the mind. It just doesn't seem to have any effect on it. It's like
No
rabbit and
respect to the intellect. I will not get anywhere near that. So, the mind and the intellect, in fact, in reality, they are actually in a tug of war. If you can understand the example of a tug of war, it is the mind that is pulling on one side and the intellect is pulling on one side. So there is never that there is a beautiful merger. So, in fact, okay, a few comments here. As Sudhakar Garu also says, rightly say, there is a conflict between so the heart here is the mind, the head here is the intellect. So, the conflict between the mind and the intellect, which is the heart and the head. So, Jayama is saying, mind is full of desires, intellect doesn't entertain them, says no. What do you mean says no? I don't know what you're saying. Okay. And then when Sitaramji is saying, when one acts in an objective manner, intellect will be dominant. Yes. When you're objective, it is the intellect controlling the mind. But, there are three types of actions. The three types of actions are, first action is action driven by the mind. Second, action driven by the intellect. Third, action driven by the mind and intellect together. So I am talking about the third type of action where there is a marriage between the head and the heart. So there has to be a beautiful sync. So the heart feels exactly what the intellect is saying. So the mind cooperates with the intellect. And also the intellect understands what exactly the mind feels. So there is no force from either factors. There is no compulsion. So the intellect understands the importance of an action. The mind also likes to do it. It's like the intellect says, you should exercise. The mind also likes to exercise. What a beautiful experience. Effortless, isn't it, those actions? But usually the mind says, eat one more laddu. Intellect says, hey, naliki tiripi, you have to do one more extra jogging pa. You have to do extra jogging to burn that laddu. So don't do. And ange conflict. Mind says eat one, intellect says don't do it. So there is always a conflict or a fight. Coming back to the verse, the intellect may understand it, but if you don't feel, it has no meaning. So you got to feel the pulse, what he's saying. Now, having used the reference of the term yajna in the previous verse, he is saying the various aspects involved in a yajna. As you recall or know, yajna is the age-old Vedic ritual of fire worship. Okay? But it is Vyasa who actually impregnated it with a new meaning. Pre-Vyasa, it was only a mere fire worship. Even today, many people go through this ritual of performing the fire worship. Every day, some of them do every day or once a month or once a week, they do this ritual. But yajna is just not a fire worship. How to convert every action into a yajna? That is what Vyasa has done. And that is what you will learn in the next, from verses 25 to 30, how you can convert various aspects of an action into yajna. So what are the various aspects of action? How to convert various aspects of action into yajna. I'm preparing you so when we get there it becomes easier to understand. So what are the various aspects of action? For any action you have to go through those three phases. The three phases of action. It all starts with one and ends with the other. Physical activity, knowledge and what one is aspiring for is the goal. Cause and effect. A couple of them have said, Vasanti has said, Jayama is saying, Rajima says senses, sense organs are the mind. Close. Rajima, you're close. The rest of them have gone. They have not even hit the board. You have come somewhere near to the bullseye. In fact, the three stages of action are before the action, while, and the performance of action. The three are, the first is the 3 R's. Remember the 3 R's we learned little earlier in Bhajagovindam class. The 3 R's, receipt of stimuli, reaction with your mind and intellect, and responses through the organs of action. So receipt through organs of perception, reaction with your mind and intellect, responses through organs of action. The 3 R, receipt, reaction, response. Okay, I will type it out, Sitaram Garu. His audio is not clear for him. Okay. Receipt of So receipt of stimuli by the organs of perception, reaction by the mind and the intellect, and your responses by the organs of action. The 3 R. Now what I refer to is how to convert all these 3 aspects of an action into worship. Beautiful. Believe me, if you have the mental capacity, the intellectual capacity to understand the depth, you will really be elevated. Now, I don't know whether I can do justice to that. It takes a lot to understand and communicate. One is for me to do that. Second is for you all to receive it. I hope I'll do my part, but you also have to be very, very receptive to be able to. It's a very subtle section of the Gita. So how to convert receipt into worship, how to convert reaction into worship, how to convert your responses into worship. So yajna is just not a mere fire worship, which is being mentioned here in verse 24. It is actually beyond it. But before we even get to that, here he says the act of offering. In fact, even this thought, if you have, you're already at the state of Brahman. Brahmarpanam, Arpanam. The act of offering is Brahman. The oblation, Havihi, the act of oblation is Brahman. Brahmagno, who is offered by Brahman. Into what? In the fire of Brahman. By seeing Brahman in action, Brahman verily shall be realized, shall be reached by him. So in essence, he's saying every aspect of the ritual is nothing but Brahman and Brahman alone. And this is known as the absolute standpoint. This is very difficult to practice it, so don't practice it. It is not a practice. What is it then? Enna Rajima? No, when you say understanding again, is it not a part? Is it not a part of practicing? See, you and I, by understanding this way, we will not be elevated to that experience. I see what you have written, an attitude of surrender. See, this is not something which can be practiced, it's actually a state you reach. It is not the cause, it is the effect. So almost the state of the practitioner is so close to a person who already reached that state. So the practitioner who is truly practicing this verse is almost at the verge of realization. So the practice and the state, the cause and effect is almost so close that you can't separate them. But you and I, if we start muttering the word Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, you keep chanting and you do it, it doesn't liberate you. You are not able to see Brahman. When you use the word Brahman, are we able to see Brahman in our actions? In the most loved ones. We are not talking of trying to see Brahman in whom you hate. The thought of that fellow, you will have convulsions, you will have, your blood boils, you get blood pressure, blood sugar you get. I'm not telling you to see Brahman in them. Okay, the person you love the most, it could be your spouse, it could be a child, it could be a grandchild, it could be your house, it could be your puja room, it could be what you love with most. Can you see Brahman in that at all times? Even in something which you have such a black market value for, even in that you can't see God in it. How can you expect to see Brahman in every aspect of life? Is it not being unrealistic? So as a sadhak, we always must understand, never overstep your capacity. Please understand this. Even when we use the terms, we must be very careful, because if you use a particular term, it must be said with bhavana. You must feel it. It is not the lips that say, it is the heart that must speak. And if your heart doesn't resonate it, don't say it. Because you're not true to it, isn't it? So we are very liberal in using these terms and we are not able to connect and resonate to it. So be realistic. Be at the level where you are. Find the level where you belong. If you are at 40% level, be at 40. Strive for 45. Strive for 50. But from 40, don't stock the stands of 80, 90, 100%. It's unrealistic. It is jarring, in fact. It is insulting. It is insulting to people who truly resonate those words. So this is a very, very high spiritual state, almost at the verge of realization, where you see everything as Brahman. Every aspect of it is Brahman. Now, in any experience, there are two factors. In fact, three factors. What is it that brings about an experience? In fact, I am going to the very basics of Vedanta, the very fundamentals of Vedanta. When you say, what brings about an experience? As I said, there are three ingredients in any experience. Now, Srinivas Garu, you are saying pleasure and pain. These are the products of experience. But my question is, what brings about an experience? For example, this is an experience, isn't it? Listening to the Gita class right now is an experience. Now, what is it that has gone into it to bring about this experience? Saraswati Ma, again you say action, any action for that matter. What goes into it to bring about that action or experience? Okay, stimuli of the mind, the heart and the intellect. I thought I'm holding on to you all to this class, and what I see, Rajima has gone to Purva Karma also. Purva Janma she has gone. So it is difficult for me to hold on to you all. You all are like, with so much of energy, you all are running here and I am not able to contain you all. Ma. Can I bring you all to the fundamentals of Vedanta, as I've said? What is the basic definition of experience in Vedanta? The basic experience of, the basic definition of experience is an experience has three ingredients. The experiencer, who is the subject, the experienced, which is the object, and the very art of that interaction between the experiencer and the experienced. Correct, Jama. The experiencer is the subject, the experienced is the object, and the very interaction between the subject and object that brings about an experience. This, in a layman's term, we call an action. So when you go through any action, any experience, there is you, the subject, there is the world around you, the object, and then there is the interaction between the subject and object. Like, from my point of view, I am the subject, you are all objects for me. And when there is an exchange between us, I have an experience. Now, from your point of view, you are the subject and everybody, including me, become objects of experience for you. Isn't it? Now, in the verse, what is the subject, what is the object? पटेल जी आप बोल सकते हैं, in the example of the verse where the yajna is being performed, who is the subject, who is the object?
हाँ जी, ब्रह्म, ब्रह्म इज द सब्जेक्ट, ब्रह्म इज द ऑब्जेक्ट.
Very good. This is what he's saying. The Brahman is the subject, Brahman is the object. Brahman is the experiencing factor. What is experienced is Brahman. Now,
Yeah.
it is not easy to be in that state. I'm only saying that. Don't mistake me when I say it is a absolute state. But in order to be in that state, you got to work out of your skin. Rest of your life, you got to work out of your skin to stand any chance to get to that state where you will realize that Brahman, everything is Brahman. And that is when, in fact, you resonate the truth which the highest Vedic declarations, the scriptures, the highest truth which the scriptures have declared is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. The world is an illusion. Brahman alone is real. So if you see anything other than the world, if you see anything other than Brahman, it's an illusion. So if your vision is so elevated, you will only see everything as Brahman. Brahman in a certain form. So the offering, what you're offering, whether be it the grains, whether be it the wood, whether you use the ghee, that is being offered is Brahman. What is offered into the fire is Brahman. What comes out of it, the flame, is Brahman. Who is performing? Me. The subject is Brahman. What is the goal I reach is Brahman. My God. If you can relate to that in spirit, if any one of you have related to it in spirit, you don't belong to this classroom. You are of a different caliber altogether, including me. I include myself when I say this. Let us be very realistic where we all are. A long, long way to go in order to digest the deepest, the most subtle import of the Vedas, which is to realize Brahman in everything. Not easy. Let's not take it lightly. It is not easy. You got to catch the bull by the horns. You got to destroy the bull by the horn. That's when you're going to get a chance. Okay. So this verse is chanted before meals. Now, why is it chanted before a meal? Any idea? Tata, I have enabled your audio. Can you tell us why is this verse chanted before meals?
And the food is Brahman, and offering is a Brahman, and the fire is the digesting.
Correct. Food is that which gives life, which sustains life. So you are trying to remember Brahman in the very act of that which sustains life. In fact, food is one of the sense indulgences. So you don't forget Brahman even while you are indulging in the sense objects. Symbolically. So when you chant the mantra, you don't get carried away, which was one of the points we said in verse when we started the class, when we answered the question. One of the aspects of the mind which creates mental impressions is indulging. So to arrest that indulgence of the mind in any sense enjoyment, you chant the mantra to tell you that this exercise of me eating is only, I need the energy, but for what? It is not for sense indulgence. I am getting into it with the only purpose of getting to Brahman. That doesn't mean I will put a packet of chili powder on my tongue. No, you don't have to punish yourself. Eat something which is palatable, eat something which is sattvic, eat something which is healthy. But while you're eating, don't get lost in the sensual indulgences. Understand, I'm eating only to get to Brahman. Therefore, in the Gita elsewhere, he says, this knowledge is not meant for who eats too much or eats too little, who sleeps too much or sleeps too little. Have you heard this before? The Bhagavad Gita, this knowledge, he is telling to Arjuna, this knowledge is not meant for those who eat too much or eat too little, who sleep too much or sleep too little. Yeah, Patel ji, boliye.
No, this is only on.
Can't hear you. You have to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, Meetahara. Meetahara.
What is that, sorry?
Meetahara. Meetahara means mean. Not above, not below. Meetahara. Meetahara, yes.
Mitahara.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's something in between, isn't it? It's a mediocre. Not. But what does it mean? Eating too much, eating too little, sleeping too much, sleeping too little. What does it mean?
Eating too high is tamasic because it's going to make you lazy.
Tamasic?
Your mind, your body, everything will be lazy if you eat too heavily. Eating too little, you won't be have the energies which you need to sustain.
Eating too little then?
Your mind, body and everything. Yeah.
Patel ji, that we understand from a layman's point of view. But there is a deeper technical meaning what eating too much, eating too little means. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little. What is the technical terms that these terms convey or these statements convey? It is a beautiful way of conveying something. Can anyone recall which chapter does it come? पता है पटेल जी कहाँ पे आता है कौन से verse पे आता है ये कौन से chapter में आता है?
I thought it is 17.
I'm not wrong.
I think it is 17.
16th chapter.
I think I'm not sure.
17 में आता है.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, you please the question for next class.
No, it's not 15.
It is.
No, it is a Purushottam Yoga. Yeah,
15th chapter
no,
is
it's
almost
not
like 15. An Upanishad. No, 15th chapter is like an Upanishad. Yeah. He will not waste the chapter by talking all this. Waste, na? It is. The chapter is only 20 verses, 15th chapter, and it is a power packed. So Anga, he will not dilute it with these examples or this kind
17.
of indirect way of teaching. No? But I don't. It's either 16 or 17. We will find out. Get the reference, and also what does the meaning? What does it mean? This knowledge. I'm rephrasing the question. This knowledge is not meant for those who eat too much, eat too little, sleep too much, sleep too little. Explain. this knowledge is not meant for those who eat too much or too little, sleep too much or sleep too little. Explain. So Patelji,
Yeah,
if you get
surely.
the reference of the verse, please post it in the Gita group for the benefit of others. Anji? Right. We have little overshot today, but I think it is fair enough.
Purnamidam
Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Guruji. Hari Om.
Hari Om Tata.